Hi, this is Vivian, and I'm talking about this week's discussion board question for week 6. The two videos, college life and the sandwich, the sandwich generation. So there was a lot of information to digest and a lot to think about. For me, I did not go to school the traditional way. I mean, I went to a 2-year college, then I went for a certification, and now I'm here, well into my 40s, for my bachelor's degree finally. So I didn't go to the traditional route of going away to school, and so it's interesting because generationally, obviously I definitely identified with the narrator of the college life where she was taking no-dos to study for her exams because I went to school so long ago, which is kind of funny when I heard her say it because I thought it was hysterical that actually someone remembered that. And now you have like all these other dynamics, all these other medical, study steroids as they discussed it in the video, which to me is completely and totally amazing. So I learned a lot about what's happening with college students and the challenges that they face in this day and age because I didn't face any of those things. It was just completely different. Even though it was, on a smaller scale, I did, I just went to school. I was not at a dorm or anything like that, even though I was for a little bit, but, I ended up going home anyway. So there was a lot to digest, a lot of information. Some of the things that I found really interesting that jumped out at me from this whole thing was the differences in our culture and how different cultures perceive their professors and just how they process it. Because, fast forward to when I went to a community college to take some classes to get into the program that I was going to get into later. I did go to school with a lot of people that were foreigners that were just here temporarily, or they were taking classes just to get into a 4-year school or wherever it was they were going to go. And so I did notice that, not anything against our students here in the United States, but I did find that they were definitely a lot more receptive to what the professor had to say. They were definitely a lot more respectful in that sense, where to them, like with the woman in the college life where she was talking about how before the last sentence, everyone is just like looking to just get up and leave, and the professor is not even finished stating his last thought and everyone's out. And I think that's a very common thing here in the United States. From my personal experiences, even in high school we did that. As an adult going back to school, I found that the difference for me was that I actually stayed in class to wait until that person finished. But I did notice that there was a lot of people who just had already taken off. So that jumped out at me. And then one of the other things that I was thinking about was the competition. The competition after school for people in Russia, and how they manage the system so that it is less, I guess, competitive for certain groups that decide that they're going to go through all these exams to get into a specialty school, and how that varies and how that differs. I wonder how that would work in our society. Where here it is so extremely competitive to just get into a program. When I was going for vascular school, there was only 10 spots and there was like 150 applicants. So, and it was a once a year program. So for me, I was like a nut job trying to get through, get all A's and B's, so that I was able to have that itch to be able to get into the program. So I can identify with that a little bit, and I find it interesting that they do things the way they do it in Russia that way. And like the student said, they don't do like everything right, but that's one thing I guess that that works for them. So one of the things that for me was a takeaway, and I'll refer back to the book, is how they also discussed people going back to school after middle aged, which I guess I kind of fall into that category, and how important it is to have that whole the whole support system, like it says in the Burke book, how the support system and academic advising makes such a big difference for returning students, because that's been my experience. I definitely know that if it wasn't for the support of my family life, I wouldn't be able to even be doing this at this point. So I completely can see that. And as far as the sandwich generation, it was a very small video, but what I did take from it was that that there's obviously this generation that is responsible for taking care of their parents and taking care of their children, and it's interesting, and I see it a lot. I see it a lot with my patients that I have, and I know that it could be very, very challenging for them. And just like our book says, the Burke book, describes how there's definitely more of a responsibility with daughters or with women to take care of their parents. And it's kind of like this unstated rule, and it's something that's obligated in some traditions, but that is this unstated rule, and a lot of them are women. I mean, 1/4 of American women are considered caregivers, according to the book. So to me, that's really interesting, and it's something that doesn't surprise me, because I do see that, and I know that that, like I mentioned before, this is something that is very well understood for certain families and certain ethnic groups. And I found both articles to be really interesting, and the reading as well. So that's all I got. Have a good one.